I'm representing Gateshead Council today. Caroline, one of the digital champions from Northumberland Council, and Amy are here as well. Durham were here this morning, but they did have to shoot off, so they were here. They send their apologies, but they kind of put their 2 cents in of what they would like me to say on their part. So we're kind of going to talk to you a little bit about the project, a little bit around what we did, just as a refresher, what we did with the full project. Our project was actually about engaging staff with using digital technology, so it was really massive when we first started, but we kind of focused it right down and we've kind of given it a little bit more than just engaging staff. It's more around problem solving. So I thought we'd start off with a quote from, although she's not sung up with us, one of our digital champions, Lynn, from Northumberland, did an Adobe Spark presentation, and this was one of the quotes that was on there, and I just thought it was really, really fitting, because I thought as part of our project, that's kind of the attitude and I suppose the positive impact of technology that we wanted to communicate to practitioners. So on your tables and on there, there's a link to our Padlet. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is on the Padlet. So there's some green cards with QR codes there. So these on your table, we'll create a Padlet basically for sharing as it started, but what it's become is a bit of I suppose, a community where tutors have posted reflections. We've got the results of a lot of the things that I'm going to talk to you about. A lot of I suppose the impact of our project is kind of on there, because we've got a lot of individual reflections, we've got workshop feedback, there's a range of all of the themes that we chose for our workshops, and they're all kind of on the Padlet. So there is a link to it as well. You can scan the QR codes on your tables, or you can type the link in. It will just be padlet.com/Sarah Willett digital OTLA. So I suppose while you're familiarising yourself with the Padlet and while you're kind of getting on there, I'll take you through a little bit about what we did, which will link to some of the stuff that is on there. So we started with knowing that we needed to kind of find a starting point for where our staff were across all 3 organisations. One of the things that we identified was that it was around, I suppose, engaging staff initially with digital technologies and kind of finding out where they were, what their attitudes were to technologies, and where it sort of sat with them, as well as the other things were actual digital skills. So we did a self-assessment. Out of that self-assessment, we had 94 people across all 3 organisations complete it. And what we had of those 94 people was that 89%, so a lot of practitioners had identified that what they really wanted from this project was for ways that they could embed digital technologies in their lessons, in their sessions with their learners, but they wanted to learn that from other practitioners. They didn't want high-tech, very technical language or deliverers in their CPD. They actually wanted CPD led by practitioners, led by people who'd actually used the technologies and who'd actually had success with them. So from that, we kind of responded and said, okay, well, that's essentially what we'll do. You've spoken, that's what you want, so that's what we're going to do. So in response to that, we we identified a team of digital champions across all 3 organisations. I'm going to come on the digital champions in a little bit, but what we did with the digital champions is that we delivered practitioner workshops. So various formats across all 3 organisations. They didn't take the same form because it was what worked for your organisation, what's going to work for your staff, and in turn what's going to be best for learners. And those workshops were 30 minutes, very informal. The practitioner delivered, so where they had strengths in OTLA, with those technologies they then delivered to staff. So the workshops kind of really encourage tutors to think about how technologies might work with their learners. And from the workshops, so from the initial round of workshops and from the self-assessment, we had a lot of engagement from staff initially. So basically, we focused it a little bit more. We asked practitioners, what's the problem that you're trying to solve with your teaching and learning assessment? What digital technology are you going to use and why? How do you expect that that will impact your learners, and how confident do you feel about using this digital technology? So everyone who attended a workshop was given a reflection form and answered those questions, because it was about looking at those technologies and how they will actually impact on your learners, on your teaching, and why. Why are you using it? And if you're not going to use it, why? So it was kind of finding out that way. So from that, our project is kind of lovingly being called the have a go approach. So we kind of talked about it at the interim event, but it really kind of has developed from that, and we really have. It's been about removing that barrier to practitioners and actually just saying, we'll try it and see if it works with your learners, because that's really at the core of it, what this project is about. It's not about shoehorning technologies in a way that is just there to tick a box, or in an irrelevant way, or just to kind of say to Ofsted, look at what we do. It's actually, is this going to benefit your learners? And if it is, try it out. If you think that's going to work, try it and report back. If it doesn't work, try something else to solve the same problem and tell us how that works. So that was kind of the whole point of the project. So at this point, I'm not going to stand and talk at you for the whole presentation because it's been a talk-heavy day. I thought we would give you a sort of an idea of what we did with practitioners. So Caroline has very kindly offered to do a bit of a demonstration. So Caroline was part of the Level 4 Digital Educators, and we have, there's people within our project who span over other projects, so within Bishop Auckland, but also who kind of fell under Gateshead College's project as well, and that's had loads of value to our project. So as part of Caroline's Level 4, Caroline did a bit of a micro-teach on Mentimeter. So that was the format that our workshops took, so I'm going to hand over to Caroline in her capable hands. And Caroline's going to take you through Mentimeter and one of our workshop formats.
Okay, so just to liven things up a bit and have some fun, could you log on to this website, please? Okay, it's www.menti.com. I don't know who's familiar with this, but it's quite easy to get into. So if someone's a bit of an expert on the table, maybe you could help each other. And then there's a code, and it's free to use this as well, so you won't get charged for any text or anything like that. And the code is 683015. Is everyone managing to get on okay? And there's a little guest the quote there, okay? So who said, life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving forward, which I thought was quite apt for this project.
It was definitely David.
Yeah, with David's permission, I'll put his picture on. How's everyone finding using it, okay? So as you can see here, there's a number that's moving up. So what this is good for is, say you know there's 10 in your class. If you knew that 10 had answered, obviously it's time to show the correct answer. I don't know how many's here, so I'm just going to have to guess with that. But it's good for you because you're getting a bit of a learner experience too. Still answering? Has everyone answered? Yeah. So. Okay, so as you can see, it was Einstein. Not David, it wasn't David, it was Einstein. Okay. So I just think that is a good example, isn't it, of something that you can use with your learners very quickly, very easily. It keeps their interest, it's not too long. It brings in the maths into a session as well if you're teaching another subject. It's nice and easy to embed. And there's lots of things that you could use. Maybe you can think of things in your sessions that you could use just to get your learners involved. Okay. So it's back to the presentation, if that's all right. So this is something that I use quite a bit. I've trialled it in all different areas. What's good about this website is it has a really comprehensive set of instructions and things that inspire you as a tutor. So if you go into the actual website, there's reams of information, which we're not going to go through today, but if you did want to look in, it is really good to give you some help there. So this is one way that I used Mentimeter, because I teach maths and English, and it's roll on, roll off, so I have inductions quite regularly. With maths, there's a lot of barriers and feelings and things, and it's very difficult initially to get people to talk about those feelings. Sometimes we do teach learners who are very shy or have autism, and it's a great way to get them engaged, because anonymously they're able to text something and it comes on the screen. And it's quite interesting because if you can see, someone spelled challenge in 2 different ways. So that was something that we could talk about with English too. But from that led on to another discussion. So we don't just leave it there, we'll actually use it to do a group profile, think about personal learning goals and some of the barriers. So that was good. When Ofsted came, I've used it quite a bit, so I was a little bit more confident. And what I did was to try and individualise the learning. I got them to put on what their personal goals were. Because I trialled it a bit before, I was really specific with the instructions, so I tried to get them to put their initials on, which was good to identify which learner was which. And as you can see, we had a variety of different things that the learners wanted to achieve for the day. The advantage with that was I was able to leave it on the screen or toggle in between screens. If I was writing on a whiteboard, your space is limited, so you have to often wipe it off the board. So I found that really good. One of the disadvantages was the writing is small, but if you click into the individual boxes actually on the presentation, if it's live, it actually enlarges it. So therefore you can concentrate on one at a time. So that's one way to get over that. And then again, you could do something at the beginning which you could rate their confidence levels, and then at the end there's some data which is quite useful. You can actually see how they've progressed. And it's nice because they're doing their own self-assessment, and again it's embedded maths, it's very visual, and you've got some nice evidence there. Okay? So just some tips. I don't know if everyone had mobile data today on their phones. Most learners do. Some ESOL students don't because they use it for phone and home a lot. So it's really good to have a contingency plan. So if you're relying on phones, which I tend to because sometimes we don't have PCs at work and things, but if you can just have a little bit of a contingency plan, that would be good. I also found if you tick this, there's a box that you can tick to allow extra responses to be added afterwards. Because if you forget, or if you want them to add something else, that is quite handy. And as you can see, I don't know whether you can see, but it's actually here. That's where the box is. So, and lastly, I found you had to be very specific with the instructions because they're concentrating on getting into it. So if you can just be specific as to what you want them to type, then I found that was quite handy. So you can make it anonymous, or you can get them to put their initials on. So I just thought might be useful now is each table, if you can just think about maybe your own practice, just for a couple of minutes, just on your own, think in maybe 3 specific ways that you could enhance your learning. Okay, think of ways that it could really help you in your own practice using this resource. So I'll just give you a few minutes, if that's okay. People have used it in different ways. There's lots of things that you can explore, and it is quite useful to enhance learning as well. So the snags and solutions, just finally at the end, what I found that it does take a little bit of time to set up initially, but it normally is very quick. Again, we've talked about sometimes the writing and the speech bubbles or the text can be small, but you can click into it and make it larger. Sometimes people don't have enough mobile data on the phone, but again, if you can plan that in and have a contingency, that would be good. There are a limited number of free slides. I think there's only about 2. But what I did was I just started another new presentation, and that got around that. And again, it's flexible, so it can be anonymous, or you can identify the learner. So, those are just a few things that I've used anyway. Okay, thank you.
So, we delivered really short, really informal workshops like that, where practitioners could come along, they could actually see technology, what it's used for, speak to other practitioners about how they'd used it, and see what the successes were. So, those workshops were then asked practitioners, what were the main things you've learned? How will that be useful to your learners? How will it be useful to you, and what differences will it make in your teaching practice? The whole thing was just about, is this technology right for you? In some cases it was, no, I actually don't think this will work with my learners. Great. So you've identified that, you know that that's not going to work. Let's try and find something within the workshops, within those themes that does. Where tutors had identified it did, how are you going to implement it? So just put these up because I thought they were quite good in terms of the have-a-go culture of the project. So these are some of the reflections. Don't worry, the irony is not lost on us, that the handwritten forms and a digital OTLA project. But I thought this kind of represented a little bit about what we're about. So how are you going to practice, implement this learning over the next month? I'm going to have a play around and create and trial some in class. So it's about actually, I'm going to try it. I'm actually going to give it a go and see what happens. So then that's where those mini interventions, those individual reflections came in, and we could actually see, you know, the impact of the trial of that. So what did that look like? How did it work with your learners? And then again, how will it be useful? New resources, new ways of presenting information, good for certain activities. I'm going to play around with the programs to see what I can find that will for ESOL currently want. So really specific areas where I will find out the impact of technologies on that actual area to share with fellow practitioners. Part of what we did in terms of finding ways that we could, I suppose, engage staff was we did peer observations. So Durham and Northumberland had practitioners go out and actually observe the use of technologies within other sessions, so practitioners using them with learners. And again, it was all about engagement, so as many ways as we possibly could to get practitioners thinking about technologies and how we could embed those in their session. So there, Paul demonstrated how easy and simplistic it can be. I do not need to overthink it, just do it. So I think that is, it's breaking down barriers and giving people the confidence to actually have a go and try it. One of the post-course feedback for one of the many workshops that we delivered within Gateshead, we had 5 people attend, so we were very informal. It was kind of very much drop in and give it a go and see if it's for you. And if after 10 minutes you don't think it's for you, go, because you don't have the time to be wasting to sit and listen to something that's not for you. But all 5 practitioners said they would act on the workshop. So obviously all 5 practitioners, we went out, we did learning walks, so very focused walks where we actually watched them use it in the sessions, and we talked to them about whether they felt it worked or not. So the digital champions have been absolutely, and I have to say, massively instrumental in the success of the project. I think they've really driven it forward across all of the organisations. We have had challenges because we've had people who started with us on the project who are no longer with us. And obviously all the way through, the digital champions have totally driven things forward, and they've been there for other practitioners. So I think it's been really successful in driving engagement, and that's something that we're absolutely keeping going. We've just been talking today about, okay, so we'll do this today, and then what's the next step? So our next step is we're all going to meet up in January and figure out what our next step is, because for us it doesn't stop here. We've had so much success with it, and we're all enjoying the process so much that actually, and we've still got challenges that we need to resolve, and actually it's not just, okay, well those challenges are unsolved, it's let's keep going with this, because it obviously works on some levels, but we need to figure out the next step. So I suppose the findings and the impact part, I think we found that we had some challenges. Probably the biggest challenge, and one of the ones that we talked about today, and how to resolve the next step, is how to get practitioners to focus on the problem-solving approach rather than be, I suppose, overwhelmed by the technology element. I think the actual way that we rolled out the workshops, the informal nature and the have-a-go approach has really helped us to resolve that as a challenge. I think in every individual reflection, where there's been absolutely no drops in confidence, and we've seen confidence move from up to 3 steps. So we're really, I suppose, it's the barriers and the confidence and getting people to have a go and try that. We know that learner autonomy has been a massive, I suppose, strength, because digital technologies have encouraged learners across curriculum areas to be much more independent, much more autonomous. There's a quote, we'll come on to that in a minute, but I think the sharing has been absolutely massively important for us in terms of, we're just talking, we're three very similar organisations, and actually we've done things differently in different ways, and what that's done is it's created loads of learning opportunities for us. One of the biggest challenges has been the strategic level of this project. So where it's been really good for practitioners and tutors, we're saying the overall problem is that on senior management, it's not culture within the organisation. So we have kind of talked about how we're going to use our next steps to sort of break that down and resolve that and make it a wider project. But it's had a lot of impact in terms of, one of our biggest findings is as part of a mini project, or sort of a side project of this, I've been working with tutors who requires improvement. So in my role as a quality officer, I've really kind of drilled down to certain areas of their feedback that we could solve digitally. So where it's been assessment strategies, so assessment strategies require improvement, we've looked at a way that that can be resolved digitally, and then we've gone out and re-observed. So where they've implemented that into their practice, they've had a go, they've practiced it, they've reflected it, they've had an opportunity to see if it works with the learners. And it's a supportive way to do it, rather than it's, well, you need to put more digital in your lessons, so have fun with doing that. It's kind of a, this is how you can do that. And that's been the biggest impact on, I suppose, me in my role in quality, is that I'm able to give people solutions, and I'm able to sit with them and say, well, you could try this, or actually you could try this, rather than, okay, well, you need to figure out something that works. So a really useful comment from Caroline about when Ofsted visited, that the way that that metameter was used within the session, and how Ofsted will have like a range of observation reports that indicate the success of the digital technologies within lessons. So the learners were fully involved. They were setting personal goals throughout the session, so it links to them being much more autonomous. And then I think assessment strategies has been a massive, significant improvement through the project. So they've had a massive impact on learners generally, and we've got extensive tutor reflections on the Padlet. There's numerous individual tutor reflections who identify that their assessments improved. I think there was two right at the top about Kahoot and how that's actually improved. There's an example there of one of the ones which is on the Padlet from one of our Skills for Life tutors. So this was particularly notable because this tutor, her last observation was actually grade 1. But what she said was, actually it's not about, okay, well I'm grade 1 now and that's it. It's actually, I can still improve and it can still have an impact on the learners. And so this was a way that she said, Kahoot was a way for her to identify promotion of inclusive assessment, which was less formal. And obviously after the session, well, I sat and reflect on that, so how did that work? Yes. Yes, don't worry, I'll wrap it up.
So that went quite well last session, and then I was put on an evening session where the part-time lecturers came in, and I did the same sort of session, and it sort of opened a can of worms. One guy started talking about this journal and how digital technology doesn't enhance the learning experience and yada yada yada, and it was a bit like I was being fed to the wolves, and it wasn't obviously a very nice session. However, I think the main thing to get out of it is the barriers that they face, is the Wi-Fi connectivity or the resources that they've got. But unfortunately, sometimes you are going to come in with attitudes that just don't want to change. And although it's not a nice route to go down, I'm sort of with Sarah. Sorry, I'm terrible with names. I'm sort of with Sarah here that I think it should be compulsory now that in observations that you all seem to be trying to use, or you use a type of digital technology or interactive technology, whatever it is, within your session. That doesn't have to be in that session specifically, as long as your scheme of work or one of your lesson plans is showing that you're trying to do that. Because how I feel from my organisation is a select few, and obviously our attitudes in this room are probably very positive and embracing this, is that it has to be compulsory for people to start buying into it and doing it, and then they'll just do it like any other process, like embedding British values I know was talked about before, and then people will come on board. But until that sort of happens within my organisation, I'm sure the other two people from Northern County Council feel the same, is that it's not really going to move forward. And it has to, like Sarah said, it has to come from the top. That's what education needs, and they're really happy about us coming in and doing sessions with the staff, but then they're not following that through in the observations and saying, like, we do need to see this. And basically, I would just say to anybody trying to get out there and spread it, like our project was to try and engage more staff, can we try and do it in a way that's not compulsory, but it has to work. Because, like I said, when you're getting things thrown at you, you've got to try and persevere through them challenges, and a bit like the bicycle, I suppose. You've got to keep cycling and just keep pushing it through there. But yeah, share what you've got. If you can tell one person, then can tell another person, then it's not just you shouting the same thing all the time.
Oh yeah, that pretty much kind of sums it up really. So although we had different approaches, the sharing was really the learning for us, because I think what we weren't doing, Durham and you were doing peer observations, but we weren't doing that and it was successful. So we were learning from each other, and actually this works and this doesn't work. And obviously it meant that we've got now a huge bank of resources, of digital technologies that we can use and take forward and add to for practitioners to use and learn from fellow practitioners. And I suppose it's only going to get bigger, really, the project, as time goes on. But that kind of wraps it up. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
I was just thinking about if I've been doing assessment for learning and I've used mini whiteboards and they're a really nice way to share that learning with the group, and then I recognise that learners are shy about having the wrong answer because it's public, then a digital approach would be a really good way to make that anonymous. And as a teacher, I think we're driven by what we think are best pedagogies, the best for our learners. So I think from a digital literacy's point of view, there's a time for compulsion, because you're working with people who could find they can't access bills and things online. It's like we've got two agendas bumping up against each other. And so on one hand, it's our duty to ensure everybody we work with is able to access everything they can, and that's where I'm with you on that idea of you can't say, because I can't do it, we don't allow our learners to experience it. But perhaps a way into teachers who think, I could do that just as easily with a post-it note and a whiteboard, is to say, what is it about that post-it note and the whiteboard that isn't as inclusive as it needs to be? And for many teachers, that's the point where they'll go, okay, I'll buy in now. So it's a really hard balance, isn't it? Because we've been on this road for a long time now, and some people get really heels in, almost like, I'm just not playing, that's the end of it. So I recognise these kind of thoughts that are going on in your head. To what extent do we make this part of what you have to do, digital literacy? But then how do we build on what you know to be the right thing for your learners? Because that's where most teachers will say, okay, I'll buy into that.
Yeah. And I suppose that was where we started out. And I suppose the minimum standards was something that kind of was born from the being able to use the assessment and actually the impact on the learners, because that's what got us the buy-in, really, because it's what practitioners want. They want to know how to solve problems with their learners in terms of reflections that were had, and the reflections specifically that are on the Padlet. And actually, in terms of the success that we had with the tutors, where their sessions were graded as requires improvement, it was about how can we solve those problems with the impact on the learners, how can we solve those problems, but how can we do it digitally, what will work for you? So rather than that being mandatory, it was actually, there is a different way. It might not work, but let's find out. So I suppose that was the buy-in.
Yeah, that's like a developmental observation, not you've got a bad grade, what you're going to do to make yourself better. And I think that's a really nice approach.
Yeah.